Welcome to Cook's Books, I'm Lauren and today I'll be doing Amy's tea tag. First of all, I'd like to apologise about the weird angle and framing. My camera died last night, refused to charge, so now we're filming this on the front camera of an iPad which refuses to zoom. I was tagged to do this by the wonderful Hannah at Once a Reader, and it's my first ever tag, so thank you very much Hannah, it means an awful lot. In honour of the tag, we're drinking my new fave, which is Twinings Strawberry and Mango, which is a lovely scary red colour, which the iPad will not let you see. But it smells good too, and the iPad won't let you have that either. Question 1. Double Bergamot Earl Grey. A robust, deep, intellectual and flavourful book. This one I chose Animal Farm by George Orwell. And yes, this is the edition I stole from my GCSE classroom. Miss Lugston, please don't kill me. I'm not just going to do that awful booktube thing of saying everyone's read this book or you know what this is about, because I think that's really quite presumptuous and it might turn people off reading a lot of classics just through people judging what the people should have read. Essentially, we follow a story of a group of farmyard animals who rebel against their neglectful owner, and they set up their own system of government on the farm, and for a surprisingly long honeymoon period they managed to pull off the running of the farm and the day-to-day business relatively successfully. But over time, greed and corruption encroaches, people miss the humans, and the system falls through. And there is always the shadow of the future and the knowledge that they are animals and that they will not live much longer. I picked this as my deep intellectual book because of the animal metaphor that runs throughout it, which actually alludes to the Russian Revolution, the overthrow of Tsar Nicholas II, and the establishment of communism. The world Orwell creates in The Farm manages to remain quintessentially British and very robust. And I think an animal's fleeting memory is really well utilised in this to kind of represent how people were led to believe and forget different things during the beginning of communism through generations and generations, whereas animals forget so often you can do that whole process within a couple of months. This allows memories to be effectively changed and power to be usurped by the pigs. This has the ultimate Orwellian flavour of political intrigue and fervour, of desire and power and dashed hopes, and it is the best Orwell I think I will ever encounter. Top 5 book. Question 2. Tim Horton's Steeped. A book that you read on the go that you come back to again and again. I am technically cheating with these books because I'm using books plural. It is the Penguin Little Black Classic range. If you don't know, I think I've spoken about these before. Penguin released 80 Little Black Classics for 80p a piece to celebrate their 80th birthday, which was a wonderful idea, and they chose some of the best loved classic and short fiction of the English language. I'm going to be bringing out more soon, which I think kind of defeats the object, but there's some I really want, so I won't complain. But I digress. These are my on-the-go books because they fit in a bag very easily just because they are so tiny. I tend to read these on the bus to the gym or walking to uni because I only have like a 2-minute walk to class, or while I'm waiting for a lecture to start. I'll just stick these in a bag and take them with me almost everywhere. The stories within them are very short, as you might expect, but they are hand-picked, they are very memorable. You will always remember where you're up to when you come back to one. If you are unsure how to get into classics, I would really recommend these because there is such a huge range. There will be something you love and then you can kind of go off and explore that writer's bibliography. These are the only 3 of my 7 or 8 ones of the collection that I've actually read, and I'll have a batch review coming for these very soon. I just think they're a wonderful idea and definitely worth recommending. Question 3. Mayor Lemon. A tangy, fast-paced read, gone before you've really savoured the flavour. And the book I've chosen for this is Stardust by Neil Gaiman, which I feel is a really odd book in terms of its pacing. To start with, Gaiman takes quite a long time setting up a rural, dreamlike, very English little village from history. And once this world's established, we follow the main character Tristan as he journeys beyond the village walls to a forbidden meadow and to the forests beyond. Essentially, this is a fantasy which centres around an adventure and Tristan's interactions with other characters he meets along the way. It deals a lot with themes of family and parentage and love from unexpected places, and it has a lot of commentary on companionship too. Once Tristan breaks away from the mould of this dreamlike setting, the pace picks up quite considerably, and he journeys through villages and far-off towns and forests, and through the sky on a lightning ship. And it all just happens so incredibly quickly, and due to Gaiman's writing style as well, if he goes off on one, he is a very unapologetic writer who will not explain himself a great deal. He is the opposite of Tolkien in that regard. Personally, I love the style because you have to take it or leave it. You have to be willing to run with what he says, and that comes in the form of strange characters, strange encounters that they have. And towards the end of the book it does get very bittersweet, and it leaves a lovely aftertaste, if you will. This book lingers with you for a long time just because of Gaiman's style and just the content of the story itself. I would definitely recommend this as a holiday read, because to read this in the sun really gives you a sense of that atmosphere of the world Tristan is inhabiting during the fair. Question 4. Chamomile Lavender. A relaxing, calming late night read. For this I chose the complete works. Whoa. For this question I chose the Sherlock Holmes stories by Arthur Conan Doyle. I want to show you these two because they have forewords by the show's writers and producers, which I find really interesting on matters of adaptation and just of loving something so much that you want to bring it back to life, much like the actual Holmes. These do actually break my rules on people and photographs on the covers, but somehow I think they work because they also have lovely little Victorian illustrations in the background and on the spines, which that isn't a good example for that. Illustrations on the spines. They're so slippy. So I have The Study in Scarlet with a foreword by Stephen Moffat, The Sign of Four with an introduction by Martin Freeman, The Hound of the Baskervilles with a foreword by Benedict Cumberbatch, the short story collection The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes with a foreword by the god that is Mark Gatiss, and finally I have The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes with an introduction by Steve Thompson. Those of you who don't know, Steve Thompson is actually the third writer involved in writing the new Sherlock Holmes adaptations. For some reason the internet seems to have taken to him less, and he does kind of less fan panels and conventions and things like that. But he is the one who wrote the Writing Back Falls mostly. Back to the point! Like Hannah, I somewhat worryingly seem to have chosen crime as my sleepy late night read. But speaking for myself, Sherlock Holmes reminds me of like a sleepy Sunday afternoon with ITV3 and Jeremy Brett as Holmes. And also of things like Columbo and Poirot and Marple, just being on a constant loop on those lazy days. So to me, it is a familiar kind of homely feel to read old classic fiction about crime. Another reason I feel like this is a sleepy read for me is that it is narrated by Watson, and that kind of genteel, familiar, warm voice really does feel like home after a while in a very strange way. And once you get used to a voice in a twice told tale format like this, they do become your friend and they take you by the hand and they lead you through the case, and it's a lot of their wonder that you're experiencing second hand. It's a really clever writer's trick, and it just makes me feel so calm to know that there is someone else on this adventure with me. I really particularly love Watson's voice during The Sign of Four when he's falling in love and struggling against that love with Mary Mortson because he knows he's not a suitable man for her, and it's the sweetest thing to see a man of a military persuasion kind of breaking down like that. It's really wonderful. And on a more shallow note, this book itself, the physical book, makes me feel sleepy because it's so embarrassing. When low lighting hits the foiled part, it just glints in a friendly way and the edges reflect the light in just this beautiful, almost hypnotic way that makes me really sleepy. The physical weight of the book as well is quite reassuring. To be honest, I'm surprised Conan Doyle never actually wrote a story wherein someone is murdered using the book of stories Watson wrote. I'm going to have to go write some fanfic now, aren't I? Lady Grey. A smooth, subtle, classic book, perfect for a winter morning. Now, people might assume when you have a booktube that you consider yourself to be very well read, but I don't. I know that I have very little knowledge on classics particularly. I'm trying to remedy this, as you'll have seen from my ill-fated March TBR video, but a lot of my classic knowledge is either second-hand or ongoing. So with that in mind, the closest I could come up with for this question was Metamorphosis by Ovid, which I'm sure I've shown in another video and is at uni, but I'll put a photo of my edition here. I chose this because it's the kind of book that you feel like if you were sitting downstairs looking out of a window with a duvet on your knees and a cup of tea in your hands on a really cold winter's morning, that you can forget that it is a cold winter's morning. It's a very vivid and colourful collection of ancient myths, and it really kind of draws you into its own world. I'm currently working my way through this collection of myths, which I'm treating like short stories, reading a couple in a sitting, leaving it for a couple of days, coming back and doing the same. But I find it so interesting. I've always been really drawn to mythology, both Greek and Roman. And this is the main method I'm using to educate myself, as well as another book which I've got here at home. Here it is. I actually bought this at the ruins of Mount Olympus, and it has what I'm assuming to be a very early BDSM event happening on the cover. This is my only ancient classic work to date that I've read. Orange Pekoe, a popular novel that everyone has read. I struggled with this one a little bit because I don't really take notice of what a lot of people have read that I've also read, because I know I don't tend to fit the just YA bracket of BookTube. So I will again talk about a book I raved about when I was starting this channel, and I'm sure you're all sick of me talking about and you thought it was over. But back comes Station 11 to haunt your dreams. This was a really popular book on BookTube. It was very hyped, but I don't feel it was overhyped. I feel it really deserved what it got. I will link my full review down below. I consider that to be the first proper review I did, because the other one was a Neil Gaiman one where I just said the word stunning about 12 times. This is a book which covers multiple points of view in multiple time frames, which all weave together to tell the full story of pre, during and post-apocalypse. This breakdown of society comes in the form of a deadly virus which is flown in from one country to another, and aeroplanes are scary now. I think this did so well because of the message of the book when we followed the point of view of Kirsten in the Travelling Symphony, because it kind of said that no matter how dire things get for humanity, we will always need the arts, and part of us will always go for Shakespeare over our own pained existence. It really is a lovely book. It's not nearly as dire as I'm making it sound. Number 7, English Breakfast, an English classic. I'm going to go in a different direction with this one. I'm going to give you a choice of 2 books for this one, and neither one would be what you're expecting. Both of these books are currently at uni, so please welcome The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson and The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. These are both fantastic British classics that I would consider the early days of science fiction. This might be a little bit controversial, because science fiction was originally born from the Gothic era with Mary Shelley's 1818 version of Frankenstein, which I actually have on my shelf. I will concede that Jekyll and Hyde is more Gothic horror, which merely comments on scientific advances of the recent years. So it was a very moral Christian warning about the dangers of meddling with science and interfering with God's plan, and I particularly love that it shows man as a complex, multifaceted being, and there are not just good people or bad people, and yet it also manages to use physiognomy to do that. It's a lovely, complex, paradoxical little novella. Now for The Time Machine, which is widely regarded as the first piece of time travel literature ever written. Please, for the love of God, watch no film based on this novella. They are all dreadful. I have done the research, and they are all utterly dreadful. I really enjoyed the voice, and yet again, as with Jekyll and Hyde, this is a twice-told tale from the adventurer's point of view. He comes back to a dinner party and recounts the fantastic adventure he's had, whereas Jekyll and Hyde is told through Mr. Utterson, a lawyer who knew Jekyll very well and encountered Hyde once or twice. I think this is very British because of the level of class it discusses, and class segregation, and a speculative theory on what that might eventually result in. And it's a wonderful comment on why we should look after our fellow man, because we don't know what's around the corner, and also that humans are not infinite. There will be a time when all this ends and it will just be the earth trying to recover from us. And for the time, I feel like that would have been quite a brave thing to write. I don't think, speaking of a time in which God's flawless human creation did not roam the earth, would be particularly well regarded by society. The only downside to this novella, I would say, is the very beginning is a little bit difficult to get into, because there is quite a long-winded, difficult discussion of the fourth dimension, which could be done much more concisely and clearly now, but having no concept of time travel whatsoever, the reading populace at the time probably would have needed that. Question 8, Canadian Breakfast. A title that tastes like English breakfast, but reads like the New World. And I believe that this is supposed to be a very early American or Canadian piece of literature. But I haven't actually read any of that, and let's face it, American history is relative, so I've instead gone for Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which is another stolen GCSE book. I'm sorry. Whilst I really enjoyed this book, it is very American with constant allusion to the American dream, which can be very wearing on readers because these characters have a sense of entitlement that because of where they are from, they're entitled to a good life, and instead of really striving to make it better, they wallow. However, the discussion of class and one's place in society is what makes this feel like a British read to me. Also, it's pessimism. It is wonderfully cynical about the American dream, and it really does have a lot going for it in that respect. It's not an elegantly written book, but my god, when 7 different things are named loneliness in Spanish, you know that these characters are lonely. It gets its point across. Question 9, Green. A healthy book that feeds your mind. And for this I have chosen, Shakespeare. So heavy. I'm not going to tell you to read something you had to read at school and that you despise, because let's face it, while Shakespeare is amazing, it's taught in an amazingly terrible way. So if you had to pull Macbeth to death and now you don't enjoy Macbeth, don't read Macbeth. I wouldn't recommend reading Romeo and Juliet anyway, even though I adore the opening sonnet. I would actually recommend that you try something that you've never even thought of before. Pick a play you've never heard of, go for it, see what you like. You might end up being really into the histories and you might pick an obscure one. But then again, I really love the comedies. They are just wonderful. My personal favourite is Much Ado About Nothing, because it is incredibly witty and sharp and satisfying. I feel like the language it uses is just enough in double entendre to give you a bit of a mental exercise while still enjoying it and following a fun plot. And also, if you have a look online, the staging that will probably come up is the David Tennant, Catherine Tate National Theatre version, which is an absolute joy to watch. It is 3 hours, but it comes in 2 parts, so it tells you when you should have a break. It's wonderful. Essentially, the plot from Much Ado About Nothing follows the army returning to stay with Leonato, who lives with his family of his daughter, his wife, and his niece Beatrice. And Beatrice has a past with one of the men from the army called Benedict, and whilst the men are stationed there, the household and the army decide to try and get the two together. And this all happens during the backdrop of another one of the army's men falling in love with the daughter of Leonato, Hero. And they plan to get married, but the king's brother decides to throw a spanner in the works because he's a git. And she has to fake her own death because of slander. She comes back to life. All sorts of wonderful things happen. It is surprisingly very funny from that description I've just given you, and I'm going to put this down before I kill someone. Question 10, Iced. A sweet summer treat brewed for the lazy days of summer. And yet again, this book is at university, so I don't have it with me right now. It is The Adventures of Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. I have a bind-up which also includes his Easter letter and Through the Looking Glass, and it was an absolutely delightful read, and I'm hoping to do a review very soon. This book is light and nonsensical, and you shouldn't take it too seriously because it doesn't take itself too seriously. I read this recently in a park in York, and with the sun shining down on you and the sound of children playing and ducks and all those other really chill summery things, it was just an absolute joy. So sit back, enjoy the ride with this book, and I will put a link in the description when I review it properly. So thank you very much to Hannah from Once a Reader yet again. I'm not gonna lie, I was cleaning my room while I was watching your tag video and I just heard, and Lauren from Cook's Books! And I nearly had a full mental breakdown because this is the first time I have ever been tagged, and I ran through my housemate's room and rewound the video and made her watch it a couple of times. She doesn't know what BookTube is, but she was excited for me all the same. Yeah, so now to do the honours, I would like to tag my friend Rachel at Rachel Louise Atkin, aka the reason I have a BookTube. She's lovely and she does really good fun videos. And I have not seen Will from WillJames881 actually do a tag video before, and I think he would have some really interesting things to say because of the wide range that he reads, and I just want to say it. I'm trying to talk quite quickly before the iPad runs out of storage, as well as the camera going mental. So thank you very much, I've enjoyed it immensely. Comments down below, like, subscribe, all that jazz, and I will see you soon. Bye!